often say in these instances, anybody who's ever loaned his brother-in-law money knows the risks that are associated with lending. Let me turn now to the topic I've been assigned, which is restructuring. First, well prior to Dodd-Frank, we at Citi decided to restructure our company. In 2000, or very early 2009, January 2009, we identified businesses that were core to our strategy and set up a management structure which we called Citi Holdings, which contained other businesses and assets, and we set out to dispose by selling or running off those assets. And we have disposed of over $700 billion in non-core businesses and assets. Excuse me, and Citi Holdings at the end of the third quarter was less than 6% of our assets. That's a market-driven board and management set of decisions, not something that was driven by Dodd-Frank, which of course hadn't yet passed. Because of these and other steps, Citi is smaller than it was in 2008, and I commend that to your attention the next time that somebody complains that the big six banks are bigger now than they were pre-crisis. We're smaller now than we were pre-crisis. But it's also true that Dodd-Frank has created incentives or requirements that have driven restructuring at our institution. I'm going to talk very briefly here about three of them. Some of them are driven by resolution issues. Some of them, excuse me, are driven by capital and liquidity requirements and stress tests, and some are driven by activity limits. Starting with resolution, excuse me, Rick described very well Title I and Title II and how those what the tools are that have been given to the FDIC, which are enormously important and a tremendous advance over where we were prior to Dodd-Frank. Citi's resolution strategy, which is laid out in the public section of our resolution plan, which we filed on October 1st, or by October 1st. Our basic resolution strategy is to use holding company assets to recapitalize the bank and potentially other operating subsidiaries so they remain open and operating. In effect, it is a version of the single point of entry approach, which we lay out in our plan, why we think it can work under either Title I or Title II. The advantages of this, as Rick said, are very large. It avoids the possible adverse systemic impact of the failure of an operating subsidiary, which is providing services to customers and clients here and around the world. The holding company fails, but the holding company does not engage in any significant client or customer activity itself. As Rick noted, it minimizes issues of international cooperation and ring fencing, as bank branches and subsidiaries do not fail in the United States or elsewhere. And it places losses on the stockholders and unsecured long-term bondholders of the holding company, as well as the responsible management, and not on taxpayers. Given that basic strategy, we have had to look at our structure to make sure that it properly facilitates resolution and that the resolution strategy